In the tranquil countryside near Mantua, in northern Italy, a child was born who would one day give a voice to the Roman soul. Publius Virgilius Maro, later known as Virgil, entered a world divided between rustic simplicity and growing imperial power. His father was a humble farmer and beekeeper, his mother a woman of deep piety and warmth. Surrounded by green pastures and gentle streams, young Virgil developed the love for nature, a theme that would echo throughout his life's work. Unlike many children of his time, he was sensitive, thoughtful, and often silent, finding comfort in the rhythms of the natural world. The bees, the plows, the fields, these were his first teachers. From the hum of life in the countryside, he learned patience, beauty, and the power of observation. No one could have imagined that this quiet child from Mantua would one day become Rome's greatest poet, shaping its myth, its destiny, and its heart through verse that would outlive empires. Virgil's parents recognized his intelligence early and sent him to study in Cremona and later in Milan. There he learned Latin, Greek, rhetoric, and philosophy. Yet, while his peers aimed for law or politics, Virgil sought wisdom in silence. His teachers introduced him to Homer's epics, the Iliad and the Odyssey, works that would later inspire his own masterpiece, the Aeneid. He absorbed the teachings of Epicurus and Plato, finding beauty in balance and moderation. His quiet manner made him an observer of human nature, not a fighter, but a thinker. In the bustling classrooms of Milan, he discovered the immense power of language. Words could build worlds, heal pain, and preserve truth. Even as he studied logic and grammar, his heart wandered back to the fields of Mantua. He knew he did not belong to the world of courts or soldiers. He belonged to the realm of ideas, of emotion, and of poetry. Those early years laid the intellectual foundation for the art that would later make him immortal. In his late teens, Virgil traveled to Rome, the empire's radiant center. The city's grandeur dazzled him. Marble temples, crowded markets, proud senators, and roaring soldiers. But behind the splendor, he saw human struggle, hunger, ambition, and fear. This contrast between glory and grief would haunt his poetry forever. Rome was also a place of learning and opportunity. He met poets, philosophers, and scholars, many of whom admired his calm intelligence. Though his health was fragile and his voice soft, his words carried quiet power. In Rome, he realized that literature could serve as both mirror and messenger, reflecting society while guiding it toward virtue. Yet, he remained humble, preferring contemplation over competition. When political chaos swept through the Republic, Virgil retreated from the noise, returning to his homeland to write in solitude. The boy who once listened to bees now began listening to the voice of destiny, a voice that whispered that he was meant to give Rome its eternal story. Virgil's life changed forever when he met Gaius Maecenas, a wealthy patron and trusted advisor to Emperor Augustus. Maecenas immediately recognized Virgil's rare genius. Under his protection, Virgil was freed from financial worries and could dedicate himself fully to poetry. In an age of political reconstruction after years of civil war, Augustus sought voices that could heal the Roman spirit, and Virgil's gentle soul was perfect for the task. He was not a propagandist, but a philosopher-poet who believed in peace and the moral strength of ordinary life. Through Maecenas, Virgil was introduced to the leading intellectuals of Rome, including the poet Horace. Together, they formed a literary circle that would define the golden age of Latin literature. Virgil's gratitude to Maecenas was lifelong. He later dedicated one of his major works, the Georgics, to him. The friendship between the patron and the poet became one of mutual respect, ambition and art walking hand in hand to build the moral fabric of a new Rome. Virgil's first great work, the Eclogues, also called the Bucolics, appeared around 39 BC. These 10 pastoral poems painted a world of shepherds, love, music, and nature. But beneath their simplicity lay political and emotional depth. Through the voices of humble herdsmen, Virgil expressed Rome's longing for peace after decades of war. The countryside he described was not just an idyllic dream. It was the heart of Roman identity. His verses captured hope, sorrow, and renewal with elegance never seen before. The eclogues were inspired by the Greek poet Theocritus, yet they were deeply Roman in spirit. People found comfort in his words. They heard a promise of harmony returning to their wounded land. The eclogues made Virgil famous throughout the empire. He became the gentle voice of reconciliation, a poet whose words could soothe an empire's scars. The boy from Mantua had become the voice of Rome's new dawn. Encouraged by Maecenas, Virgil began his second major work, the Georgics, around 36 BCE. This four-book poem celebrated farming, the beauty of rural life, and humanity's connection to nature. It was both an instruction manual and a spiritual reflection. Through bees, crops, and soil, Virgil revealed a deeper philosophy, that civilization's strength lies in hard work, patience, and respect for nature. The Georgics were dedicated to Maecenas and served as both art and wisdom for Rome's new age of peace. The work's musical language and vivid imagery were unmatched. Lines about farmers enduring storms or tending vines carried universal truth. Augustus saw in the Georgics not just poetry, but a national message, that peace must be cultivated like a garden. The Georgics secured Virgil's reputation as Rome's moral voice, a poet who transformed ordinary life into something divine. By 30 BCE, Augustus had unified Rome and sought a grand epic to glorify its origins, a poem equal to Homer's Iliad and Odyssey. Maecenas turned again to Virgil. Reluctantly, the poet accepted the challenge. He did not wish to flatter power, but to explore destiny. Thus began the Aeneid, the tale of Aeneas, a Trojan hero who fled the ruins of Troy to found a new people, the Romans. For Virgil, this was more than myth. It was a meditation on duty, sacrifice, and fate. He worked slowly, devoting the next 11 years to the task. Every line was crafted with care, every image filled with meaning. Through Aeneas, Virgil told Rome's story, not of conquest, but of endurance and moral responsibility. Virgil wrote the Aeneid in hexameter verse, the same form used by Homer, weaving myth and history together. The poem followed Aeneas through war, love, loss, and divine trials, portraying him as a man torn between personal desires and divine duty. The famous tale of Aeneas and Dido reflected Virgil's belief that love and destiny often stand in tragic opposition. Every canto carried layers of meaning, political, emotional, and spiritual. The Aeneid was not just Rome's foundation myth. It was a reflection of humanity's eternal struggle between freedom and fate. Virgil spent years perfecting each passage, often reading drafts to Augustus and his literary peers. He saw poetry as a sacred craft, a bridge between man and the divine. As the verses grew, so did Virgil's legend. Yet inside, he remained humble, anxious that his work would never truly reach perfection. Virgil's relationship with Augustus was one of mutual respect. The emperor admired Virgil's honesty and insight, while Virgil admired Augustus's vision of peace. Yet, Virgil carefully avoided turning the Aeneid into propaganda. His Aeneas was not a flawless hero. He was human, torn by grief and sacrifice. This made the poem real and timeless. Virgil's message was subtle. True leadership requires compassion and suffering, not mere conquest. Augustus, though powerful, understood this wisdom. He protected Virgil, offering him the freedom to write without fear. In an age of power, Virgil's gentle poetry reminded Rome of virtue. It was art serving empire, not through praise but through truth. Despite fame, Virgil lived a quiet and modest life. He never married, preferring solitude and study. He was tall, dark-haired, and known for his gentle eyes. Friends described him as shy, kind, and deeply spiritual. His health was fragile, and he often retreated to Naples for rest and reflection. There, he wrote by the sea, surrounded by scrolls and silence. He avoided the noise of Rome, seeking purity in thought. For Virgil, poetry was not performance, it was meditation. He saw himself not as a celebrity, but as a vessel through which truth flowed. In his simplicity, he embodied the ideals he wrote about: humility, patience, and moral grace. In 19 BCE, Virgil set sail for Greece, hoping to refine the Aeneid and walk in the footsteps of Homer. It was a pilgrimage of the soul, the student finally greeting the master across time. But fate intervened. While in Megara, near Athens, he fell gravely ill. Despite his weakness, he insisted on returning to Italy. The voyage home was slow and painful. His friends and companions saw the light fading from his eyes. Yet, even in sickness, he whispered verses, revising lines in his mind. The man who had written of heroic journeys now lived his own final one, across the sea, back to his beloved homeland. When Virgil arrived in Brundisium, his health had deteriorated. Knowing his end was near, he called his friends and made a solemn request. He wanted the Aeneid burned. He felt it was incomplete, unworthy of immortality. But Emperor Augustus refused. He knew the poem was already perfect, even if unfinished. Shortly after, Virgil passed away, aged 51. He was buried near Naples, where his tomb still stands today. His last moments were quiet, a poet fading into eternity, leaving behind a legacy that would define Western literature. His wish to destroy his work showed his perfectionism, but history decided otherwise. The Aeneid would live, as eternal as the Rome it praised. After Virgil's death, the Aeneid was carefully edited and published under Augustus's supervision. It quickly became Rome's national treasure. Children memorized its verses, scholars analyzed its meaning. The poem's vision of duty, sacrifice, and destiny inspired leaders and citizens alike. Aeneas became the ideal Roman, brave, loyal, and selfless. But beyond politics, the Aeneid touched the human heart. Its language, rhythm, and emotion set a standard for all future poetry. It became not only Rome's story, but humanity's story of struggle, hope, and transcendence. Centuries passed, but Virgil's words never faded. During the Middle Ages, he was revered as a sage and prophet. Dante Alighieri made him the guide through hell and purgatory in the Divine Comedy, calling him the light of reason. In the Renaissance, artists and scholars studied his verses as sacred art. Kings, philosophers, and poets drew strength from his moral clarity. His works influenced Milton, Tennyson, and countless others. To every generation, Virgil represented the union of intellect and emotion, faith and reason, a poet who spoke to both empire and eternity. More than 2,000 years later, Virgil's legacy endures. His poetry continues to be read, translated, and cherished across the world. He remains the voice of moral beauty, a reminder that true greatness lies not in wealth or power, but in virtue and understanding. From the fields of Mantua to the libraries of today, his words still breathe with life. His message is timeless, that humanity, though fragile, can rise through duty, love, and hope. Virgil, the poet who gave Rome its soul and the world its conscience. His verses did not die with him. They became immortal, like Rome itself.